Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and welcome to the third part in what I guess is now a mini-series on advanced handling flags in GTA Online. These are simply little parts of the handling files that change how vehicles behave and can either be in an on or off state for any given vehicle. Rockstar has been playing around with new advanced handling flags since 2018's Supersport Series update, which have caused some cars that have had them applied to have weird engine physics like the Entity XXR, weird suspension physics like the Itali GTO, and generally made a lot of new cars worse to drive than they should have been had they not been applied. You can see the full story in parts 1 and 2 of this mini-series, but there's also a handy playlist which gives you the full story so far on advanced handling flags, all of which will be linked in the description and pinned comment of this video for you to check out for further background or to refresh your memory. So, the reason for this video is that brand new advanced flags were introduced with the Casino DLC back in mid-2019, and their purpose was to stop cars that had it from being slammed or stanced by shooting the rear wheels. But after the Los Santos Summer Special DLC in mid-2020, that flag was actually given a new function, namely stopping cars that have the tyres can clip handling flag from getting any benefit from off-road wheels. For those who don't know, previously any car that had the tyres can clip regular handling flag, not one of the new advanced flags, these original handling flags have been in the game since the start, would benefit from better bump absorption when a wheel with a thicker sidewall was used, with off-road wheels having the thickest sidewall of all wheel types. Putting them on a supercar that had the tyres can clip flag would provide a much nicer and more smooth driving experience. But this now only applies to cars that have the tyres can clip flag that came before the Casino DLC, because every car that has that flag since then also has the advanced flag that now stops it from working. What this means is that on a number of cars since the Casino DLC that actually have the tyres can clip flag and previously would have had better, more smooth handling from off-road wheels, now drive with off-road wheels the same way that they drive with stock wheels in terms of how they absorb bumps. Basically, they'll be less smooth than they were, and if a car doesn't react well to bumps, you can't now put off-road wheels on it to make it better. Obviously this was never possible with cars that didn't have the tyres can clip flag in the first place, but now it no longer works for cars that do have that flag too, but again only for cars that came in the Casino DLC or since then. Now, because a number of cars had this advanced handling flag applied before the change was made to its behaviour around 6 months to a year after they were released, those cars were all originally tested for lap time when off-road wheels were still helping them. Now they don't. It also gives us a point of comparison to test how the same car acts with and without this flag, as you'll see some examples on screen now with the Zarusso. You might argue that it now reacts to curbs and bumps in the road in a more realistic way for a supercar, but it certainly doesn't make for a good driving experience. Sometimes realism shouldn't be the be-all and end-all goal when it comes to video games. The full list of cars affected by this are being shown on screen right now, and there are certainly some big names in there, including the top 3 supercars for lap time. Keep in mind that there are a number of cars from the Los Santos Summer Special and more recent Cayo Perico heist updates that don't get any benefit from off-road wheels despite having the tyres can clip flag, but retesting doesn't need to be done on those as they were tested in their current state to begin with. It's only the cars that were released with off-road wheels working on them that now don't work that need to be retested. So how would this affect the lap times of the cars that have changed? Out of the 10 cars that needed to be retested, 2 of them experienced no change at all because they have 2 advanced handling flags, and it turns out that when that's the case, only the first one applies. Because the flag governing this is the second one for the Neo and the Zion Classic, they still benefit from off-road wheels despite having this anti-tyres can clip flag. A further 3 cars either didn't change at all or had minimal changes to their lap time, mostly because of other factors making them smooth to drive. For example, the Retinue Mark II's maximum camber or the ISSI Sports soft suspension in general give them a smooth driving experience even without off-road wheels. The off-road wheels didn't really help them that much. That leaves us with the 5 supercars, and this is where the differences really show up. The Furia loses nearly half a second and drops from 13th in the class to 20th, while the Zarusso fares even worse in terms of lap time as it loses nearly a full second and drops from 10th to 14th. But what about the top 3 supercars for lap time overall? Well, we start with the third placed S80RR, which loses exactly half a second and drops behind the Wagner and Thrax into 5th place. As with all of these supercars, it's simply a case where the lack of smoothness provided by the off-roads means that cars can't stick to the ground and be pushed as hard when cornering, as well as inducing instability on more bumpy sections of straight. But what about the top 2? They were always so close for lap time and the only cars that ever got into the 57-second lap time range. Would anything change here? Well, firstly, the Krieger loses just over half a second, dropping it out of that 57-second lap time range to a 58.5. It becomes a slightly more inconsistent driving experience, but it does still maintain a healthy buffer to the rest of the supercars. The Emirates, on the other hand, actually isn't affected quite as badly, losing just under half a second to put it now 3/10ths quicker than the Krieger rather than 3/100ths previously. The suspension of the Emirates seems to be softer than the Krieger by default, meaning it gained less benefit from the off-road wheels than the Krieger did. Worth noting though that the Krieger is still the choice for stunt racers as it gets more of a boost from tubes than the Emirates does. These two are both still significantly quicker than the rest of the class though, even if the gap back to the pack is a little bit smaller now. However, this wasn't the only new advanced handling flag added with 2019's Casino DLC. There was also one that was only added to the newly introduced open wheel cars that essentially stops them from getting any kind of speed boost. Whether it's curb boosting, brake boosting, handbrake boosting, whatever. Absolutely nothing works with the open wheel cars when it comes to the usual ways to gain extra speed in GTA, and it's all because of this one advanced handling flag. As of right now, I'm not sure why they haven't tested it with some other new cars like they've been doing for years with all the awful engine and bouncy advanced flags, but it essentially solves all problems with this game when it comes to all the weird boosts that cars experience. These things might not be universally thought of as a problem across the racing community, but certainly across a lot of the GTA community as a whole, curb boosting especially is much maligned. You can see from this example how the old T20 acts with the anti-boost flag applied to it. Normally a car that is notorious for getting big boosts from curbs and bumps, the situation is completely reversed when this flag is active on it. It's almost quite jarring to be watching the Speedo and not seeing it jump higher every time it hits a bump. If anything, the car in this state becomes too slow, and that's a common feature when this flag is applied to current cars. Much like how open wheel cars can feel somewhat anemic in a straight line, normal cars also end up being quite slow and boring without the inherent speed boosts from bumps. Remember, even tiny micro bumps in a seemingly flat road surface on the map still induce some small speed increase, and is also why completely flat stunt road pieces produce slower top speeds, so with this flag applied, all cars get significantly slower. To remedy that, all cars would have to have their engine power values increased. Testing suggests an approximate 30% increase to engine power would bring cars in line with the speeds they are now in most situations after the anti-boost flag is applied. Some added benefit of that is that on flatter surfaces the cars would have higher top speeds than they do currently, as well as cars would have a more predictable acceleration curve rather than it being a case of simply which bumps you hit. One side effect to the anti-boost flag is that cars appear to retain their default ride height at high speeds instead of getting lower, as you can see from this comparison, which induces more body roll and weight shifting. Though they don't suddenly become undrivable or anything, it's just different. This is something that was changed with the Cayo Perico Heist DLC, as previously when this flag was applied, cars experienced weird visual bugs where the wheel would go up into the wheel arches. This has now been fixed, so they're clearly making progress with their live beta testing using us as guinea pigs. So to conclude this third part of the Advanced Handling Flags saga, let's go over what we've seen. The anti-tyres can clip flag for me is a bit of a double-edged sword. While it was never great to have to put off-road wheels on a car to get the best performance, the smoothness they provided was incredible. For example, the Zarusso is actually a little broken because its rear suspension isn't level, the right rear is lower, and it's a pretty awful, almost undrivable experience on normal wheels. Putting off-roads on it helped it significantly and turned it into a quite nice, smooth driving experience. That's why it lost so much in terms of lap time. Now though, it's forever in that undrivable state. Off-road wheels don't help it feel better to drive anymore, and that's fine if this flag was going to be applied to all cars, but it's only cars from the Casino DLC onwards. All cars before that have the tyres can clip flag, like the T20, Wagner and many other older supercars, still benefit from the smooth driving experience that off-road wheels offer. If anything, it would have been better to have all wheels perform the same on tyres can clip cars in terms of bump absorption, rather than remove the bump absorption altogether. But that's just my opinion and comes from me looking for the best driving experience for any given car possible. To be honest, I'd like to see tyres can clip applied to most cars, at least most quick cars, and have all wheels give the same benefit as off-roads to make a smooth driving experience across the board regardless of car and wheel types. Not having that smoothness doesn't matter so much in something like a slow sedan, which doesn't have tyres can clip flag in the first place, but the quicker the car is, the more it becomes necessary since you're hitting every bump at a much higher speed. As we saw from something like the Italy GTO, quicker cars that react strongly to bumps and curbs become a pretty horrible and inconsistent driving experience. The anti-boost flag, however, is only ever positive since it solves a lot of problems with the various silly boosts in this game, at least from a pure driving perspective. Curb boosting, brake boosting, wall boosting, dirt boosting, the list goes on. I'll probably do a video on them all at some point, but they're all essentially rendered useless thanks to this one new flag. But obviously again, it's only on the open wheel cars at the moment, and Rockstar never goes back and adds things to old cars. So it's clearly just testing for future cars or the next game entirely. There's an outside possibility that the enhanced versions of the game for PS5 and Series X coming in the second half of 2021 will change things up more substantially and maybe add these things to all cars, but honestly it's a very slim chance and I personally wouldn't bank on it. Nevertheless, it's nice to see that Rockstar seem to have found something that actually works to get rid of these quirks of the game engine, and applying this flag in particular would fix a lot of the problems GTA Racing has in that regard. If they get it to work consistently and in such a way that there are no bugs associated with it, alongside generally upping the engine power of cars that have it applied, there's no doubt in my mind that it will be in effect in the next GTA game. They have been experimenting with plenty of other flags too. We've just talked about the two most pertinent. For example, the Cayo Perico heist added the Winky, which has a new flag called Spoiler Mod Doesn't Increase Grip. I guess they finally addressed them being able to use the spoiler category for some other modification and not have it increase traction, like the spare wheel on the Sterling GT or Dubster, or a variety of weird mods on other cars that increase traction that aren't spoilers, but they use the spoilers category behind the scenes. I'm sure they'll continue to experiment as time goes on too, as they have been ever since Downforce was added really back in 2016. We just have to stay on top of it, and my job is to keep you guys informed on it all. We'll have to wait and see how it all pans out and what they choose to do going forward. Advanced flags can completely change how cars perform and handle across the board, and with some giving a positive experience but most before these recent iterations giving a very negative experience, Rockstar will have to be careful what they use if they choose to make widespread changes. Only time will tell how they handle it. But that's pretty much it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for all the support. Hopefully this was interesting and entertaining, and I'll see you next time.